Here's a place where all of us can be safe. Our stories of transformation can be safe, and all the things we want to research are safe here. This is Safe Space with Cheyenne. I'm really excited you're here, and I hope you stick around for a while, because I've got a lot to show you before I leave Earth. I love you guys.
Hi friends, welcome back to the Safe Space. Today I have Dr. Stef. She is a spiritual psychologist. She is involved in transpersonal psychology, and what can I say? Just like my favorite type of psychology. I'm really into mind, body, spirit healing. I think you can exercise as much as you want. You can eat as much as you want. But if you don't get down to the root and the nitty gritty of healing and why you have all of these patterns spiritually, you might just, keep running into the same cycles over and over and over. Thank you, Threads, for connecting me to Dr. Stef. She answered one of my prompts about awakening and what it feels like in her personal journey. Today, she's not only going to talk to us about that, but she's also going to talk to you a new program she's rolling out to help you align with your soul's purpose. So Dr. Stef, thanks for coming on.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm just absolutely thrilled to be here. What a great platform.
Thank you. We had wonderful conversation even before we started recording. We went down our love for Mary Magdalene, the types of healing we like to do. And I'm really excited to get into your authorship too, because not a lot of authors in their bio will talk about crediting clairaudience for the connection they have with writing and how it comes out of them. And I am one of those people too. So when you find another person like that in the world, it feels like a golden retriever finding another golden retriever at a dog park. And you're like, yes, you get me. You get my energy. You get how all this works. So before we get too far into that, I do want to start around the time, maybe who you were before, what made this awakening happen in you, whether it was spontaneous, an event, and then how you got into the work that you're doing now.
Wonderful. Well, it started a long time ago when I was about 15 years old. I was an avid reader, and my first job was at, it's called Shorey's Bookstore in Seattle, and it was an old, rare bookstore. And I told the guy I didn't want money, I just wanted books. So I started building my library way back then. So I was already into philosophy, Greek literature, Greek history, Western Civ, basically. But I just could not get enough of the Greeks, the ancient Greeks. It was like, it made me feel like I was at home when I was involved in reading these types of things. So my spiritual awakening happened completely spontaneously. I wasn't sitting there meditating or anything. All of a sudden, I could just feel myself going like out of my body, up, 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 and then out. And I was in that state for 3.5 days, which, as many of us know, that's the old style of initiation. And I wrote the whole experience down, and I called the book A Mystical Tradition, because I felt like I came from a particular tradition, and that experience of initiation and cosmic consciousness really brought me back home. And I remembered who I actually really, truly was. And what I have to say about that is I was such a young age. I didn't really know what to do with it and how to be in the world after that happened. I started university when I was 16, and I was very quiet, very shy, and it made me really uncomfortable to not really know how to be in the world. So it took me quite a while, and I eventually decided I was going to cope with that by just kind of turning it all off, just focusing on school and just being like the girl that's going to school. And so I really didn't pay attention to those skills for a long time as a way to kind of just get through university.
Okay, let's go back into this body experience that you had, because I've had my own experience of what is this revolutionary, blissful feeling happening in my body, but not having any definition. So do you think at the time, with how young you were, all the things that are on your plate, and wanting to shut it down was because you didn't have a definition, and it was just better to kind of like pull away from it and go experience like a normal life after that?
Well, I knew exactly what it was because of the subjects that I was studying. I was studying all kinds of esoterica. I don't even know how it came to me, how I found it. It was a synchronization and a synchronicity in life. We just came together. So I did know what it was. And I'll have to say that it was the most deepening and expansive feeling I've ever had. I have had other spiritual experiences, but this was a 3.5-day experience. And so the volume of time that passed makes it different than the other experiences that I've had. And I think too, because I was so young and my family wasn't really spiritually minded, I was kind of the oddball in the group. So I didn't really have a way to have it explained to me in an outward fashion. I knew what it was internally, but I had no external validation, and I had no way to really externally process what happened. So being in school, I just decided it was easier for me if I just kind of put that part of myself away and just was like in school, and I didn't have to pay attention to clairaudience, clairsentience, clairvoyance. I just tuned it all out.
I know that people can do an on-off switch, whether they're developing their gifts or they're wanting to completely shut them down. Did you have a moment where it was like Mentos in a Coke bottle, where like those gifts really weren't going to stay off or shut down anymore?
In a manner of speaking, I guess that is true, but it took time for that to happen because if I hadn't been so shy, it probably would have been a little bit easier for me to mix reality, like real life, with spiritual life. But because I was so shy, it made it easier for me just to not pay attention to it. And I'm glad that I did that because at the time, my scholastics were really important to me.
That's what I was thinking too, is I'm like, well, if you are going to school and for the stuff that you're going to school for, that you need a lot of heavy focus. And not to say that anything spiritual is a distraction, but there are times where you do need to put it on the shelf to focus on what's in front of you. And the schoolwork you're doing, very heavy, especially at the young age that you're at. So I feel like maybe it did serve you in a way, and it does help that you did have the definition at the time. And you're like, well, maybe I'll revisit this when I'm more stable. My credit hours are in place. My degrees are in place. So I like that part of the story. That's good job on that. Abandoning all of your studies and going the opposite way. I think it paid off. Was there a part in your study where you realized you were going to be able to bring the spiritual back into, not only through needing it for your own healing, but going into tying psychology and spiritual healing together?
Absolutely. Ever since I was a young girl, I wanted to be the Clara Barton for the soul. I just admired what she did with her life to such a degree that I wanted to emulate that. But I have a weak stomach. My grandfathers were both doctors. My grandmother was a nurse epidemiologist. So I come from a line of, from the medical tradition, and I just didn't have the stomach for it. So I wanted to work with the soul. And I just knew from a very young age, this was my life's work, helping people heal. And I'm very empathic, like a lot of us are. And I thought that was a good way to really, bring that to the forefront and use it to help people.
I read this earlier in your bio, but I forget the name. It's the book that your work is based on. You've been studying it for about 25 years.
Anthroposophy.
Yes. Can you explain that to me and the listeners of what that is?
Yes. So anthroposophy is a spiritual science developed by Dr. Rudolf Steiner at, I think he lived from like 1860 to, I can't remember, 1923, I think. But he developed, so inside of anthroposophy, you have everything. He was a polymath. So he developed biodynamics, medicine, psychology, art, education, curative eurythmy, architecture. I mean, every single subject under the sun. He was a true clairvoyant, and he read the Akashic records, and he had a Christ experience. And out of that experience, this is what he brought to the world. So I came across anthroposophy when I was about 16 years old. So I've been studying it for quite some time. And I have to say, as a student of anthroposophy, I am continually astounded and amazed at the volume of work that he produced and the amplitude of perfection that came with it. So the task now, he was like 100 years ahead of his time. And the task that he gave to his followers was to really bring anthroposophy into modern life in a living way, and to bring, these subjects forward to serve the future of humanity.
That is a big task.
Mm-hmm.
I know it's not the only person that you've heard that says, they're so ahead of their time. A lot of people like the Carl Jung and the Alan Watts, any of that type of work, I always wondered, like, if they were really lonely at their time, since they're making stuff for a small percentage of people at the time, but a greater percentage of people will be affected long after they're gone. Mm-hmm. And I think this guy is definitely in that category. What drew you to that work the most? Was it the connection of all three, the mind, body, spirit coming together, or just the thickness and diversity of his work?
Well, if you consider the fact that I was studying esoterica and, history and the mystery religions, when I came across anthroposophy, he sort of brought all of these subjects to life in a modern sense, and it was informed from the future. So use this tool to bring the past into you from your soul's history and your karma, and move into the future to serve, future humanity. And I just thought it was a perfect vehicle to utilize as a framework. And I will say this too, when you study anthroposophy, it changes you. It's a transformative study. It works with your subtle bodies, and it's transformative. It really does. It's soul nourishment.
I love that. I'm going to have to do my own research on it, because meeting you is my first time coming across his specific work. Mm-hmm. And I got to dive into it a little bit before we recorded, but as soon as I saw it, I was like, yay, my next rabbit hole is coming on.
Good.
Okay, so let's continue on the story. So did you have any other internal blissful awakening moments? Because you said it lasted for 3 days. And the only thing I can compare it to is when I had my internal heart chakra expansion experience. I just remember being blissed out, very high up on the frequency is what I would say. And obviously I eventually come down to be more grounded, but did you just feel like a tremendous amount of energy was finally not only flushing itself out, but allowing more in? Is that why you say it lasted 3 days?
Well, it lasted 3.5 days, I think, because of my past karma of having gone through that initiation before. But I will say that I call it a Christ encounter. And yes, I was blissful, but also what happened was I was getting I went to soul school. I was kind of explained how the whole universe works and how everything works together. And with that, I was told you have to go back and use that to help humanity. And so that's a grand task, and it's taken me a while. I mean, I'm over 50 years old now, and it's taken me a while to integrate that experience. And that's pretty common. I've, utilized that experience through life in a variety of capacities. I've written several books. I have a book called The Grail of Sophia, and that was about an experience of, encountering Sophia. And so I've done things throughout my life that are fueled by that experience. But I will have to say that it's only after 50, and there's a significant reason why, just in terms of how life cycles work. Every 7 years, we enter a new phase of development with our soul bodies. So that's where I'm at now, actually bringing it to the world in an integrated format and in a manner that actually kind of it's a whole package. I'm not just doing this and that. It's not peppered. It's comprehensive.
So is that where we're getting into the Soul's Return, the new program that you have coming out? You've taken not only your direct experience, all of your research and your degrees, and found a very grounded format to give it to the masses?
Sort of. So I have had a couple different encounters with partners who were narcissists. And but to go back a little bit, my PhD work was in transpersonal psychology from Sophia University, which is in Palo Alto, California. And that is basically a spiritual psychology. So instead of going the licensure track, like inside the box psychology, where you check off something for insurance, give somebody a diagnosis, we didn't really think about it that way. The human being is a body, a soul, and a spirit. And if you look at the human being as an integrated person, especially out of biography work, because everybody is so unique, my studies there really focused on a spiritual psychology. My dissertation work was on parental alienation, mothers who had lost their children to parental alienation. And it was a two-part study. So the first part of the study was qualitative research on 9 mothers who had lost their children in some capacity to parental alienation. The middle section was a healing study. So each participant had a healer assigned to her. And then the second part was, okay, well, what happened? How do we quantify what happened to you in a qualitative way? It was a qualitative study. And most of the mothers were reunited with their children in some way, shape, or form. So my work really focused on distant healing and how that works and why it works. And so after that body of study, after I encountered narcissists, I encountered one type of narcissist, which was an overt narcissist. And then years later, I ran into a covert narcissist. Well, I didn't know there were different kinds of narcissism or narcissists. So I thought after meeting this person, I would certainly recognize it when I ever encountered it again. And yes, I did recognize this type. But when this type came along, I didn't know any of the red flags. I didn't know any of the signs. And it was a covert narcissist. And they are far more insidious and far more damaging and dangerous because you're constantly gaslighting yourself like, well, was it me? I mean, it's so under the radar that you kind of wonder, God, maybe it's me. So you're always second guessing yourself. So out of that experience, I wrote The Soul's Return, and I did not intend to write a book. I just intended to do some research to explain to myself what the hell just happened to me. So at first it was like 50 pages of, oh, okay, I understand this. And then I just kept writing. And now there's a book, and embedded in it is a workbook. And it goes through the spiritual anatomy of narcissistic abuse. So it really goes into the dark forces that work in the narcissist, how they spiritually infect the target. And then basically they make a drug addict out of you too. So you're 2 drug addicts, and each party is no better off than the other. But so my experience was, I left and, well, how do I help other people heal from this situation? And the only reason you can ever heal completely from narcissistic abuse is if you attend and you address the soul. Because if you're only addressing the psychology, soul healing, it's not going to reach where it needs to go. These are soul wounds. Etheric imprints and etheric implants, and like they're thrashing your soul and ripping it to shreds. So there's a particular way that you need to heal this wound. So that's what my book really addresses.
That is a fantastic book, especially with the rise of just people understanding not only narcissists exist, but all the different types. Because you're right. I came in, like, the amount of times that you can hear narcissism, whether in society or in counseling or getting help or someone being diagnosed with it. I don't remember anything in the 90s and the early 2000s and later on about it. And now there is this massive push of not only looking within ourselves for these characteristics, but realizing like, hey, I actually in the past probably was in a relationship with someone and I just called it something else. But the fact that you bring up the soul work into it makes me think of like soul fragmentation happening at like very minor points, the gaslighting, the questioning yourself, all of these crazy things that happen during these relationships where years later you go past them, you know, it's supposedly in your past, but your body still remembers. So is there a way where we stop attracting that because of the soul level healing that we're doing, even if we can't identify immediately like, oh, this is a covert narcissist that's doing this to me right now? You have other boundaries and barriers that they've crossed where maybe you don't have to identify that they're a narcissist. You just know they're not treating you the way that your boundaries are allowing you.
It's my contention that yes, if you actually do the healing completely, you will not, your energies just will not be attracted to each other. I think we all know that the number one defense you can have, if you're wondering if they're a narcissist, is what I call a white picket fence. You know, boundaries. Boundaries are the number one deterrent for a narcissist. And I think too that we have to be careful about throwing that word around too much. There's so much misinformation right now in the narcissism space. A lot of people are, you know, I don't know what you call them, but like couch psychologists. They had an experience with a narcissist and all of a sudden they're a specialist. There's so much misinformation floating around on the internet. I just cringe when I see it. People just don't know. So I hope my voice can help people actually heal from it completely and understand what it is as a spiritual reality. Like, for example, I heard yesterday some guy on TikTok saying the spirit of narcissism. There is a spirit of narcissism because the Bible says so. And no, that is absolutely not true. There is no spirit of narcissism. There are dark forces, and it's a triad. It's a dark triad of evil forces, dark forces that work through people. And they work in phases. So this one comes in, draws you up, love bombs you, gifts, whatever. And then the next one drops you down with the discard, with the abuse, when things like suddenly go wrong, you don't know why. And then the final force is what like basically eats you alive when you're flat on the floor and you just don't feel like yourself anymore, but you don't really know why. So these forces work together. There isn't one spirit. There are three different kinds. And that's what answers the different types of narcissism. It explains why there are different types because of the different forces working behind it.
Well, narcissism from an energy perspective too, just in my own opinion, it's like a feeding and a siphoning energy too. That's how I would say I would discredit the spirit of narcissism immediately, because spirits, especially biblical ones, they're not here to feed off you. They're here to help and assist you. And anything that fragments off into darkness, I don't believe it was ever of the light. I think it was manifested from all of the like karma, so to speak, that dark energy that kind of wafts off anyways.
Well, if you think about it, dark spirits can't live on their own because they have no light. They have no self-sustaining force within them. So they have to feed off something else. And that's where they feed on your life body. So they're actually siphoning your energy center. And that's why people at the end of narcissistic abuse can barely get themselves off the couch. They've literally been siphoned to, you know, quote, death. And these forces need to feed themselves on your like energetic life, especially around the solar plexus. So they just are incapable of being self-sustaining, and they are, they're going to have to fuel themselves somehow, and it's through other people. And that's feeding their false mask. You know, the cure to anything related to narcissism is authenticity. When you're authentic, you're in your, you know, capital I, your truest self. And they just can't do that. They are usually in some kind of a trauma response from the age of attachment from their primary caregiver. And instead of coping with the trauma they underwent, they erect a false self, a false mask. And obviously that doesn't have life of its own. So it uses you as their narcissist, or as their echo to their narcissist. Echo back to me how wonderful I am, and if you break that code, you are cast out, you're cast aside. So that's kind of why they have to eat off of you.
I also think that's why people don't realize it in the beginning of the relationship, especially people that later down the road have been married for however many years. And they're like, I just realized I married a narcissist because I quit going along with the program. In the beginning, it's like, oh, all these things are so wonderful. Yes, the love bombing. But you bring up two really great points. One, narcissism is a trauma response, that they're obviously not doing their own work. And then two, hope I don't lose my thought on this. Yeah, it's gone. All the points you brought up were great, but I just lost the second one.
Well, maybe it'll come back.
It might come back. I don't know. I've done this before, but just listen back to what she said, because she brought up two good points. I like knowing, not saying like narcissists are victims by any sense, but they're people that have just refused to heal and put a false mask on. There's no energy in that false mask. They have to siphon from you. And yeah, basically wrapping back into what I think my forgotten thought was, the fact that they have to use you as that echo chamber, I think is really powerful, because I think that's how people start to realize, like, especially in a marriage, yeah, everything's good. You move in together and now you are supposed to grow together, and growing is extremely uncomfortable, especially with somebody else saying, hey, this isn't working for me. This isn't working for me. Do you actually accept it? Realize we all need work? Or do you double down on your false mask and just laser beam it back at the other person and say, no, it must be all of you? Because, my mom's told me I've been perfect my whole life.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yes, exactly. I mean, when you break away from being their echo, they literally feel that it is an attack. That's how they experience it. And if you think about the dynamic of that, I don't see how you could work through any situation if they're constantly feeling under attack. If you're expressing something out of your authentic self, there's no path forward,
So like individually, could the narcissist go to therapy, find out that they're a narcissist and start working through it? Or would that just crumple them completely, that they've been like living a lie? Like, how I understand how we can go through and identify if someone's been abused by a narcissist, needs that healing, and to work through it. But for the narcissist themselves, how do they go about healing that within them?
Well, the research shows that there is no cure to treat narcissists, and that it's somewhat intractable, which is kind of a bad news. So typically, narcissist number one won't go to therapy. And number two, when they do, it's still never their fault. They have no ability to self-reflect, because if you think about it, there's no one authentic to reflect on to. If they're consistently defending that false mask, there's no room for dialogue. There's no room for exchange. So it's pretty depressing research. But the bottom line is that they have to be responsible for themselves. And the best thing that others can do is protect themselves against this malaise of, it's a spiritual virus, really, is what it is. And to not have the encounter with it.
It is very hopeless that you say that, because when you just said they have to reflect back to the authenticity, but there isn't even authenticity under there, because that was never built. It's just layers of narcissism. It really does feel very hopeless for the person. Mm-hmm. So
what it should move us to is compassion. Mm-hmm. Not excuse, but compassion. I mean, they're victims in a sense too. They're trauma victims. Mm-hmm. They have just decided and chosen and succumbed really to a terrible way, very unfruitful way of of managing it.
Yeah, that is really sad. We're going to have to switch gears now and go back to highlights of your story because, I mean, it does make you sad. And I think it's great that you say we should go into compassion about it. Because, yeah, I mean, just a personal relationship I have in my life where I've had to put up boundaries just because there is no self-reflection, there is no accountability. It's all the same cycles of a narcissist, I would say. And it's not like it doesn't break my heart to be a part of their lives. It really does, but I can't be there for that type of mindset or anything. So it's just kind of bone chilling to me when you're like, oh, they have to go back to the authentic. And I'm like, I never even considered that they don't have anything authentic because they've spent most of their life just building mask upon mask upon mask.
Mm-hmm. The good news for me is that those of us who have been targeted by these people, I don't like to use the word victim, and I like to use the word target, but I also don't like to think of this encounter with the narcissist as a trauma or a tragedy or something terrible that happened. It is a soul level summons to rise to the occasion of your best self. If you think about life before you incarnated and you decided on each test you chose for yourself to pass because you wanted to develop certain attributes, certain features and skills and qualities in yourself, we signed up for it on a certain level. And when I first heard that, this is something that Rudolf Steiner said, I threw the book down and I thought, well, for heaven's sakes, why would I ever decide to do that? This has been a terrible experience. But, years later, after the wound has, scabbed over, I can see it objectively and do realize that, like, for example, if I hadn't had this last encounter, I wouldn't be in this body of work. I never would have come to studying narcissism and writing about narcissism. So there's always a blessing. And I really do think that it's an initiation of sorts.
I'm a big believer in soul contracts just because I think it takes the good and the bad away from things. And you're right, it puts you in like a neutral state of this is what I'm going through. And I think it was in another clip of yours where you said, like, we don't fight these things, we transmute them. Mm-hmm. And I think there's so many healing practices where people are still on the defense and you're like, I'm fighting this, I'm fighting that. And it's like, there's a level of transmutation that has to be allowed into healing for it to actively work. Otherwise, you're just in a cycle of good and bad, hero, villain, over and over and over. So I think that's really powerful when you bring that out in your work too, is that you are being called to level up and rise up and not even sit there and point and go, they did this, that's why I did this, or I am the way that I am. It's completely going above all of those levels and looking at it from an eagle eye. Why is this happening for me? Not what is this doing to me or why? Mm-hmm. So anybody that has that stuff in the work, especially the word transmutation, I'm completely enthralled with, because I have tried to go the other way with it where I was all of those titles. And then when I got into the transmutation and it's allowing you to step up more and not see it through the lens of like victimhood or feel like you even have to be stuck with your trauma. Because I think a lot of people, based on what they're going through, especially with your example of throwing the book, you're like, why would I sign up for that? That's still such a human expression when your soul is asking for a voice in the mix as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think the fact that if you think about evil, what is the role of evil? Well, evil will eventually be redeemed as well. And if we think about the two faces of evil, one lifts us up without embodiment, the other one throws us down and it becomes mechanized and hard and rigid, cold, calculating. So these things come from a place that is here to help humanity. But what does love do? Love is the most powerful event, feeling, verb in the universe. And if you think about, if you love evil, you just have a presence about you, it loses its power over you. It's when we're fighting it that you're actually engaging it and you go to its level. So by transmuting it, which is, I mean, this is a Manichaean concept of transmuting evil. And the way Rudolf Steiner says the same idea is that suffering is crystallized wisdom. So through these experiences, they're meant to build us, but we have to rise to that occasion. People getting lost in addictions or terrible habits haven't risen to the occasion of themselves is really what's happening. But you can basically transmute evil through love.
This reminds me of an old story that just popped in my head, and I wish that I could quote where it came from. But basically, a Buddhist monk was living in a cave. He went out for water one day, and he came back, and there were 3 huge, like, mechanical demons in his cave, and they were doing all this spooky stuff around him. And he quietly went and heated up a pot of water, possibly tea, on the fire, and he took this chalice and he offered compassion and love to them. And like 2 of them fled, like immediately. They were just completely aghast that one, the guy wasn't in fear, didn't try to fight back. He offered them love and compassion. Here, have a drink, stay, sit with me for a while. But the 3rd one didn't go so easily when he continued to do it. And that's when he realized that it was a manifestation of himself that was coming out to face him. And after he finally heard out that darkness, that shadow side of what he wanted to hear, it finally fled the cave and left as well. But he had also sat down with his darkness, transmuted all the negativity through love and compassion, and up-leveled a part of himself that he didn't even realize, that part was still stuck in him.
That's amazing. That's a great story.
It really is. It's one of my faves. I pulled it out a couple times on here because when people talk about not only facing other demons in a loving way, but the internal demons as well, I think it's just powerful, powerful work. I wish that everybody knew more about it and would utilize it more, but I still think there's a higher percentage of people that are in denial about the darkness that's inside of them, or, even the self-awareness of how they're out there in the world treating others or treating themselves. But that work was really, really good for me because it gave me space to be okay with being the villain in people's stories, whether it was a lie or whether it was the truth. I was like, you know what? I did that and I have some darkness in me. Okay, like, let's work through this. That poem really, really aligns well, especially like my core values of compassion and unconditional love. Not that I can embody them 24/7 as much as I would love to.
Right.
But people like Jesus and Mary Magdalene really helped me out with that. When I look back at the teachings of theirs that I like to lay my eyes upon.
Yeah, we can aspire.
Yes, we can always aspire for sure. I want to get into your authorship, some of the books that you have made. I understand you were writing them during your healing, and to me it turned into like clairaudient channeling where you could use your direct experience to help others. As I said earlier, not a lot of people will put out the fact that they're using clairaudience in their authorship. I think most people credit it to imagination or another like grounded term. But that's one of my favorite things I like about you is you are putting it right out there. This is how this book came to me. I'm stepping out of the way so the voice can come through and say what it needs to say. So I want to know, when did you realize you were like truly clairaudient? It was something that has been with you, will always be with you. And when did you start utilizing it instead of feeling like you had to turn it off?
Well, I knew that it was part of me when I was quite young. I don't know, 12, 13, 14, something like that. I'd kind of always done that. I always was writing, just always writing. And like I have hundreds and hundreds of pieces of prose and poetry and clairaudient writing. Most of it I will never publish, but some of it I have. And it took a big leap of faith for me to come out and say, oh, I write this from clairaudience, because I went through so many experiences of being a spiritual person before people really were ready to hear those words. And that's a large reason why I kind of went into hibernation with it. I just didn't know how to explain who I was to the world. Now, with so many people having spiritual experiences, and the culture is much more embracing to these ideas, that I decided to own it and, offer my reality of who I actually am and just put it out there. Like, people can take it or leave it, you know. I'm not attached to their reaction like I used to be. That's a big lesson.
Yeah, it's a very big lesson. Something I think I still struggle with randomly. Not that I walk around in Walmart and telling people I'm clairaudient. You know, I don't want to be like on that level, but there is like a level of self-acceptance that I know I really had to work through the past several years with it. Whether I always say this, and I got this from a really great hypnosis practitioner, but she's like, I'm always looking for ways to debunk myself. And then I'll meet with people, I'll have these experiences, I'll work with these clients in these areas. And, you know, I'm confirmed, like, this is reality. I am able to do this type of work. But she goes, even after, 20 years, I'll still have my days where today's the day I feel like debunking if this has all been real the whole time.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. There's ebbs and flows. That's for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think we would all like to come out as our authentic selves and be like, this is what I'm capable of doing. This is what I'm learning. And everybody be like, yay, we're so happy for you.
Yeah.
Everybody really is on their own journey. And I've realized just from like media that I used to consume before I had my experience and after, I remember like the music or the books that I would listen to when I was younger. And I went back and I re-listened to those and I reread those and I could see them from a different perspective. And I was like, I was listening to this in a completely different context and emotional understanding. And now, oh my gosh, they're actually saying this.
Mm-hmm.
So I find it interesting when you're like attracted to work in a younger age for a different reason. And when you loop back around and re-listen to it with, I would say, like a heightened sense of consciousness, you can just find so many more like golden nuggets in the work. So when I find people that are accepting of their clairaudience and using it for their gifts and understanding this does come from a higher source, it's just coming through my vessel, I just think it's so powerful, and it empowers other people to realize that they have that gift within themselves as well. And co-creating with that energy is one of the best ways to heal and continuously keep the flow of energy going through you.
Yeah, I think that you hit on an important point, which I want to underscore, which is that we all have these gifts. It's not like certain people have the gifts and others don't. Such a misnomer. I think we need to really be more open about how do these gifts manifest? Because a lot of people have, quote, psychic experiences and they don't realize it because they're somewhat subtle. You know, the way the media expresses these gifts is not quite reality. So I want to really be a voice of, just tune into yourself and pay close attention. We all have these gifts inherent. It's part of being a human being. And just those who choose to develop them, you can develop these skills. It's not out of reach.
I love that. I agree with you 100% on that.
Mm-hmm. There's a lot of snobbery and hierarchy in the spiritual world, I guess. And the spiritual leaders that act this way are not your teacher. There's no such thing as I'm special and you're not. That's just not a healthy mentality.
But those are also some really great red flags to look for if you're a beginner going into any spiritual practice, any meditation, wherever you want to go. There are so many red flags that you can look out for. And that is one. If you find the hierarchy or they're looking down upon you in some capacity, or, oh, I've been doing this for so many years, and they want to like be your channel, is what I think. I've met those people along the way. They really wanted me to disregard my intuition so I could believe in their vision of whatever was going on. And I remember like just collecting, like through all the practitioners I went with, I just collected my red flags and put them in my back pocket. And I was like, I'm going to build like a safety list for people. It's to say, I've sat in front of a bunch of people, whether it's in spiritual stuff or classrooms or workshops. And I've always believed not everything everybody says is going to be for you, but there is a reason, there is a nugget, there is a line, a sentence, a book reference, a relationship that you pick up along the way that was meant along the path. So I think people should have those experiences to level up their discernment and their intuition, so to speak, but also like, just like you, like having gone through those experiences, you're like, well, I don't want anybody else to go through that. That was awful. Like, let me just give you a little bit of advice.
Mm-hmm.
Go into these situations and just, be a target, as you would say.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. That's what we're here for. We're here for each other. And we will move into the age where like, I can't be happy if you're unhappy. We will move into that phase. And, it's a true compassion for your fellow human being.
I think we definitely need that in the world, especially with how social media has turned everybody less compassionate in the comments, hiding behind the screens, saying things that I would hope they would never say to somebody's face, but I don't really know. But I agree that even though things look dark, I still think the light is moving, the light is coming out. And I love any books that talk about like the reforming of consciousness or the earthly plane coming into a higher elevation. Like just from an observe, don't attach standpoint, I think the Age of Aquarius is a wonderful study about all of the darkness coming to light to heal. And if you understand that, you can kind of see it out in the world instead of going, oh no, this is the worst thing that's ever happening, everything's going to hell. You're like, actually, I think I'm just witnessing something that's supposed to be happening anyways. Like, let's transmute this, let's heal this, let's be a part of the good. Mm-hmm. So I think a lot of your work has a lot of powerful tools to be able to help people with that. And I want to know more, like if I'm a listener and I want to get in on the Soul's Return class, what do I need to do? Is there anything besides just signing up that I need to do? Should I be prepared in a certain way to do this?
Well, how I'm doing it is, number one, I have a master class that's 90 minutes that we kind of go over the material. And then if you decide from there that you want to sign up for the program, you can do that. I'm launching the beta program right now, and I want to have 4 people come on. And from there, I'll launch the real program. So the other thing you can do is buy the book, which I want to mention is also a workbook. So as you read the book, the workbook goes along with you. So by the time you finish the book, you've worked through the workbook aspect of it too. So you should have achieved a lot of understanding and healing by the time you get to the end of it. So it really just matters, like, what degree do you want to dive in?
I love that. Still giving people a choice. That's powerful. Mm-hmm. And for my wrap-up question that I try to ask everybody is, if I'm a beginner, whether on a spiritual journey or a healing journey, I'm a little confused, I don't know where to start, what would be your advice to them to at least get the ball rolling?
Well, number one, I think that you have to honor yourself. It all begins with honoring yourself and going inward and seeing yourself for who you are, taking stock of where you are, listening to your intuition, and really being honest with yourself. Like if there are parts of you that you're not crazy about, well, just, flip it around and say, I am so happy and grateful that, and turn it into a positive. And having the right paradigm in place is so empowering, and it's so life-changing. Really being intentional with yourself is absolutely vital. So be authentic and be intentional and be open is what I would say.
Beautiful. Thank you so much for the advice.
You're welcome. It's been a real pleasure.
I know. I really enjoyed it. And I know we could have gone down like so many other rabbit holes. So I think we did a really good job talking about what we said we were going to talk about. But I see plenty more in the future for us. So thank you so much for coming on today.
Yeah, I do too.
I will have all of Dr. Stef's links down below so you can check out her books. You can check out her website if you want to be a part of the Soul's Return class. All of that information will be down below, and I look forward to connecting with you in the future.
Me too, Cheyenne. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Have a good day, friends. We'll see you on the next episode.